Shalom, 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 shalom. As always, first I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah, Kodash. Yahweh is the Most High's name, which means He is, or He is to be. Yahweh Shai is the Son's name, which means He is the deliverer. As always, double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, who are leading this word in truth and spirit and sincerity. And salutations to my fellow Hebrew Israelite brothers out there that are plowing the fields, bringing out this word, this truth, in the name of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai. And salutations to the brothers and sisters that have been edified by the truth of the Bible, of the scriptures, of who we are, the true children of Israel, the Israelites, and who the other nations are. All praises and glory. As you can see, today's edification is called Ed0mites to Europeans. The world is waking up. Ed0mites to Europeans. The world is waking up. So as you can see here, Job chapter 15 verse 6, thine own mouth condemneth thee, and not I, Esau. Yea, thine own lips testify against thee. So let's see what that's about carefully. They went from being from Ed0mites to now calling themselves Europeans, Caucasians. But like the scripture says, thine own mouth condemneth thee, not I. Yea, and thine own lips testify against thee, Esau. Without further ado, let's have a look at, listen to this.
The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other.
What was Esau's blessing? I've got to stop it there. I wasn't even going to stop it. Esau's blessing was what? Let's quickly just bring it out. I wasn't even going to stop the video. All right? Esau's blessing. We're in the book of Genesis, chapter, where are we? Genesis, chapter 4, hold on. Chapter 4, 27. Genesis chapter 27. What was Esau's blessing? All right? Let's quickly, we're going to go back to the video, but let's quickly bring it up on the screen, all right? Because it's probably best that you see it for yourselves. That's first and foremost, this is when white people started calling themselves white. Bacon's Rebellion. Before that, they identified themselves as the countries where they came from. Dutch, German, English, Irish, Scottish, French, Danish, Swedish. They never called themselves white. Never. But this is when it happened, during Bacon's Rebellion. And we're going to go into that, all right? But first, I want to quickly show you Esau's blessing. Genesis chapter 27. And then we're going to go back to the video. I didn't mean to stop the video, but I had to show you it as he said it. As he said it, I got to show you it, right? Not making this stuff up. Genesis 27:37, all right? Listen carefully, listen up carefully. And Isaac answered and said unto Esau, Esau is the forefather of the Ed0mites, today who we call Europeans or Caucasians, or what they call themselves, so-called white people. He says, behold, I have made him thy Lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants, talking about what he did for Jacob, how Isaac had blessed Jacob before Esau. And with corn and wine have I sustained him, and what shall I do now unto thee, my son? So, And Esau says unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept, broke down in tears, just like I was breaking down in tears today. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, the riches of the earth, which is what Esau controls, and the dew of heaven from above. Right? He controls the air and this land and the sea, Esau. The fatness of the air, the fatness of the land, and the fatness of the sea. The riches of the air, the riches of the land, and the riches of the sea, Esau controls. Then he says, and by thy sword shall what? Shall thou live, and shall serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So by thy sword shalt thou live. All right? So let's just quickly go back to the video.
We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back.
Because a lot of the Southern Italians, especially down in Sicily, are Israelites. Just in case you don't know, a lot of the Southern Italians down in Italy, in Sicily as well, are Israelites. Because Southern Italy was conquered by the Moors, just like Southern France and most parts of Southern Europe was ruled by the Moors. The Moors were Israelites who were practicing Islam, just so you understand. But listen up.
Right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary?
Why? Let me show you why. Before we continue with this video, we're going to show you why. This is why. Bacon's Rebellion. This took place. I'm going to quickly read this, and then we're going to go back to the video. Bacon's Rebellion was an armed rebellion held by Virginia settlers that took place from 1676 to 1677. After this event, this is when the Europeans, the Edomites in America, started calling themselves white people. It was led by Nathaniel Bacon against the colonial governor William Berkeley, after Berkeley refused Bacon's request to drive Native Americans out of Virginia, which are our fellow Hebrew Israelite brothers, the Native American Indians, right? Thousands of Virginians from all classes, including those in the indentured servitude. Most of the people that was doing indentured servitude were the Irish. And also, a lot of the Irish are Israelites. That's why they're known as the blacks of Europe. They call them the Black Irish. There are a lot of Irish that go back to the 12 tribes of Israel. Ireland was also conquered by the Moors. It was once called, at a Hebrew name, it was known as Hibernia, which is Hebrew. Ireland, just so you understand. And a lot of the indentured, the majority of the indentured servants in America were Irish. And a great portion of the Irish actually go back to the Israelites, because they go back to the Moors. The Moors ruled Ireland before the British took control of it. It says here, it says, thousands of Virginians from all classes, including those in indentured servitude and races, rose up in arms against Berkeley, chasing him from Jamestown and ultimately touching the settlement. The rebellion was first suppressed by a few armed merchant ships from London, whose captains sided with the governor, Berkeley, and the loyalists. The loyalists are the British, all right? The loyalist government forces arrived soon after and spent several years defeating pockets of resistance and reforming the colonial government to be once more under the direct crown control. Bacon's rebellion was the first rebellion in North American colonies in which discontented frontiersmen took part, at somewhat similar uprising in Maryland involving John Cody and Joseph Fendall that took place shortly afterwards. The alliance between European indentured servants, which the majority of them, probably 90% of them, were Irish and Scottish, the European indentured servants And as I said before, a lot of the Irish and a lot of the Scots are Israelites. The word Scotland means black man, black land, right? That's what it means, Scotland. It means black land. It says, and the word Irish means angry man. That's why they love fighting. They call them the fighting Irish. It means angry man or man that's angry. The word Irish, all right? And the Irish, even to this day, are referred to as the blacks of Europe. So, if you want to understand why the indentured servants, it says here, the alliance between European indentured servants and Africans, which were the Israelites, a mix of indentured, enslaved, and free Negroes, right? Which were the Israelites. The free Negroes are what they want to call free black people. The African Americans, these are the children of Israel that were in the British colonies in North America, right? The free Negroes, it says, a mixture of indentured, enslaved, and free Negroes disturbed the colonial upper class, the elites of Esau, just like how we're disturbing the elites of Esau today. It says they responded by hardening, this is what they did, the racial caste of slavery in an attempt to divide the two races from subsequent united uprisings with the passage of the Virginia Slave Codes. The Virginia Slave Codes of 1705 were a series of laws enacted by the colony of Virginia House of Burgess in 1705, regulating the interactions between slaves and citizens of the crown and colony. The enactment of the Slave Code is considered to be a consolidation of slavery in Virginia. So, this is what they did. It says, while the rebellion did not succeed, because it wasn't meant to succeed, we had to serve our servitude. We had to serve our judgment. This is why it was never going to succeed. While the rebellion did not succeed in the initial goal of driving the Native Americans from Virginia, it did result in Berkeley being recalled to England. So this is what happened. This was the rebellion that took place against the British, against the English, the indentured servants and the slaves, ones that they called free slaves, the ones that were actually enslaved, which were the Israelites. The Virginia Slave Codes, this is where they brought in calling themselves white. That's why it says here, these codes effectively embedded the idea of slavery into law by the following devices. Established new property rights for slave owners, allowed for the legal free trade of slaves with protections granted by the courts, established separate courts for trial, prohibited slaves from going armed without written permission. Whites could not be employed by any blacks, allowed for the apprehension of the suspected runaways. This is when Europeans started calling themselves white during Bacon's Revolution, when they introduced what they called the slave codes in Virginia. They never called themselves Europeans or white people before that time at all. Never did they refer to themselves as that, basically. It says the law was devised to establish a greater level of control over the rising African slave population, which were the Israelites. It also served to what? To socially segregate white colonialists from black enslaved persons, making them disparate groups, hindering their ability to unite. A unity of the commoners was a perceived fear of the Virginia aristocracy, which had to be addressed, and who wished to prevent a repeat of events such as Bacon's rebellion occurring 29 years prior. This is when these Edomites started establishing themselves as white people. This is what the elites did, all right? Just so you understand. So let's quickly go back to the video again. Listen up. Shalom to the Akiyams on the comment board. Shalom, Amawad Abad, beloved brother. All praises from Virginia. Shalom, brother.
That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you
Understand? They say, let's create this thing called whiteness. That's what the slave codes were about. That's what Bacon's rebellion was about. This is when these Edomites went from being called Edomites to Europeans to white.
testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make...
That's where the United States police force came from. The slave patrol is the original policeman in the United States of America. That's where that gave birth to the police force in America. You want to know why you're being shot and murdered and killed in the streets in America? Because the same people that used to run and capture you during slavery, when you used to escape as a slave, they're the same people that are patrolling your neighborhoods and your streets today. That's where the police force started. Slave patrol.
And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped. Because
we're trying to see the same thing happening today, right? You're seeing the working class so-called white people today, Edomites today, that are questioning the elites of their own people. They know Amalek's in charge. They know the so-called Jew is in charge. They know that these Amalekites are in charge. So now they're questioning the whole thing. They're starting to question, just like back then. Except this rebellion that's coming, it's going to be the rebellion of all rebellions.
The divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown.
Absolutely. So we're seeing that same thing today. So this is where it took place, right? The servants and the slave codes, Bacon's rebellion. This is where these Edomites started to call themselves white. Bacon's rebellion. That's where it all started. So I want to bring out a couple of scriptures. We're going to go to the book of Psalms 52. Now, it says futility of boastful wickedness. And that's what we see today with Esau, Edom, these Edomites. All of this boastful wickedness that they are doing, that they are continuing to do, that they are planning, it's futility, it's futile, because the Lord is coming to take down Esau, Edom. He's coming to enslave the Edomites and to take down their society, their rulership, and he's coming to destroy the greatest thing these Edomites ever created, the United States of America. So, futility of boastful wickedness. Let's see what this is talking about. This is a psalm of David, beloved King David. It says, when Doeg, the who? The Edomite. When Doeg, the Edomite, came, and let's quickly look up the word Edomite so that we all understand where, I know most of you know this, but for those of you that don't know, we need to just bring this into the light, out of the darkness.
Strong's H130, Ed0mites, and the form just below that, Edom.
Let's see who this is. Edom, Edomite. An Edomite, or descendants from or inhabitants of Edom. Who was called Edom? Jacob. Edom, the son of, not Jacob, sorry, Esau, Salaki. That was a slip of the tongue. That was the devil trying to get me confused, right? It was Esau that was called Edom. It says Edom, the son of Isaac, Jacob's elder twin brother. Genesis 25 and 25. More often called Esau, right? The descendants of Edom. That's who the Edomites are. That's who these Europeans are that call themselves white people, i.e. the nation of the Edomites or Idumeans. Idumean is the Greek word for the Edomites, for Edom, right? Idumeans is the Greek word for Edomites. And also the country Idumea, which is the Greek word for Edom. The nation is called more fully the daughter of Edom, sometimes referred to as the daughter of Edom, talking about the whole nation of Esau. All of these Europeans, these so-called white people, they are the daughter of Edom, right? So that's who it's talking about. So let's just quickly go back. So Doeg is an Edomite. I just want to read a few verses down so you can kind of see, you're going to see where we're going with this. It says here, Doeg the Edomite, when Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul and said unto him, David is come to the house of Amalek, right? He's a grass, Doeg, right? He's come to grass to say where, to tell King Saul where David was hiding out, right? With Amalek. I believe Amalek was the priest. He says, why boastest thou thyself in mischief? This is talking about Esau. This is a psalm of David talking about the Edomite Doeg. This is their whole, this is who these people are. Listen carefully what King David says. He says, why boastest thou thyself in mischief, O mighty man? The goodness of the powers endures continually. That's what we keep telling you, boy. The goodness of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai endures continually. It doesn't matter what these devils have got planned, right? It says, thy tongue devises mischief, like a sharp razor, working deceitfully. Thou lovest evil more than good. What did he say? Oh my God. I'm sorry, right? I just got to go back to the part where he said that. Let me just add this. Salaki family. I just need to go back to the part where he said that.
Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies.
Hold on, I'm going to be.
We did in Europe, we just killed hated. Europeans didn't call themselves white.
Listen up again, all right? We just read from Psalms, right? I'm going to go back into it. It says, thou lovest evil more than good, and it says, and lying rather than to speak righteousness. Thou lovest evil more than good, and lying rather than to speak righteousness, right? Now listen to what he says again. Salaki family.
We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary?
Why? Understand. Come on. Right, so let's go back to the scriptures. So we're doing it again. That's all they did. So it says here, thou lovest evil more than good, and lying rather than to speak righteousness. This is Esau. These are the Edomites. Thou lovest all devouring words, O thou deceitful tongue. That deceitful tongue is what they use today to say they are white people. There's no such thing as white people or even Europeans. They are Edomites. But that's what the deceit gives the world. It says here, the Most High, the powers shall likewise destroy thee forever. He shall take thee away and pluck thee out of thy dwelling place and root thee out of the land of the living. This is what the Most High is getting ready to do for these devils. The righteous also shall see. Who are the righteous? The elect of the house of Israel. We're going to see it. We're going to be here to witness it because we're going to play a major part in this man's destruction. The Lord is going to pluck him from his dwelling place. He's going to root him from the land of the living. And the righteous, those of you that hold on to this truth to the end, the elect, shall see and fear. Because, like I said, we're going to see something that's going to terrify us at first, but the Lord is going to deliver the elect. And then what? First, we're going to fear and shall laugh at him. Then we're going to, once we get our new bodies in the chariots, we come down, we're going to laugh. We're going to be in the right frame of mind. We're going to laugh. We're going to say, yeah, this is what it was all about. We're going to be hunting them. It says, lo, this is the man that made not the Most High his strength, because he thinks he's the Most High. He thinks he's a God, these Edomites. All their technology, their power, and their money. But trusted in, there you go, in the abundance of his riches. Who else could this be talking about? Well, we know it's talking about Edom, the Edomites, because that's where we started, right? Doeg, the Edomite. So we know it's talking about the Edomites. It says, lo, this is the man that made not the Most High his strength, but trusted in the abundance of his riches, and strengthened himself in his wickedness. And he's going to continue strengthening himself in his wickedness until the Most High is ready to take this devil down. Completely down. So, Job. Let's go to Job. Book of Job, chapter 15. 15:01. Job 15, verse 5. For thy mouth uttereth thine iniquity, as we heard, and thou choosest the tongue of the crafty, as we heard. Thine own mouth condemneth thee. Esau's own mouth, his own people are going to condemn him, and not I. We're just bringing the facts to the forum, but his own people are going to condemn him, as you see. Yea, thine own lips testify against thee. Thine own lips.
To create this thing called the white race. Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people.
And that's what they're figuring out today. All praises to Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. Thy own lips shall condemn thee. Thine own lips testify against thee, Esau. Psalms 64. Few more. Psalm 64, here we are. Verse 8. So they shall make their own tongue fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. So they are making their own tongue fall upon themselves. Isaiah Isaiah 47. Verse 1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon, America. Sit on the ground, and there is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. No more. No more is it called tender and delicate. Take the millstone, grind the mill, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, and pass over the rivers. So what does that mean? This is metaphoric, poetic, symbolic language talking about how America, Esau, Edom, America, Edom, and these Edomites in America are going to be revealed to the world. As the scripture says, take the millstone, grind the mill, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Verse 3. Thy nakedness, that's what we see happening, shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I, Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushai, will take vengeance and I will not meet thee as a man. So his nakedness is being uncovered. It's being revealed. This is what we see going on here.
Right? So ultimately, the rich figure out they've got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness, and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon,
same thing we're seeing today. That's who your policemen are. They started off as a slave patrol.
the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown.
Same thing they're doing today. So the scripture says, thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I, Yahweh, by his son, Yahushua, will take vengeance. And I will not meet thee as a man. He's not going to meet these Edomites as a man when he comes in all his celestial form. As for our Redeemer, Yahushua, Yahweh of hosts is his name. He's coming in the name of his Father, the Holy One of Israel. The Holy One of Israel. It says, sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the lady of the kingdoms. No more. America's destiny, Esau, these Edomites' rulership, is coming to an end. Everything's in play. I was wroth with my people. That's why we went into slavery. That's why they was able to have us incarcerated. That's why they were able to kill us and shoot us on the streets. because the Most High was wroth with his people. I have polluted mine inheritance, the 12 tribes of Israel, African Americans, West Indians and Caribbeans, Native American Indians of North, South America and Canada today, who they call Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans and Puerto Ricans, and the Israelite foreigners that are scattered amongst the other nations and will look like some of the other nations, living in the ghettos in those countries. I have polluted mine inheritance and given them into thine hand, Esau. Thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. The prisons are filled with our people. And don't get me wrong, some of our people are in those jails legitimately, but as a whole, they're in there because the white man, Esau, Edom, has the rule over us. The Most High put us in his hand. And thou says, I shall be a lady forever. This is what Babylon the Great believes. America's the greatest country in the world, the beacon of the world. So that thou didst not lay thy things to thine heart, neither didst thou remember the latter end of it. They've not read the prophecies in Revelations, their latter end. Jeremiah 50:51, Isaiah 13:14, 24, 34, Ezekiel 35:36. They didn't remember their latter end. Ezekiel 38:39. Joel chapter 3. Come on. Therefore, hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that says in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. Well, Babylon the Great, Esau Edom's greatest works is going to be destroyed by the Most High. Because he believes. He shall not sit as a widow, neither shall he know the loss of children. But that's coming in the tens of millions. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee, you Edomites, Babylon the Great, in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. As we all know, this man trusts in his money, his riches, and his power that he possesses. But he's forgotten who's put him there. So he's trusted in his wickedness. Thou said, none sees me. That's why they create this imaginary place called hell, to make you believe they want to be absolved for all of their crimes. They say, oh, they died, they've gone to this place called hell. So they're telling themselves, none sees me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it has perverted thee. His technology, his so-called wisdom, has truly perverted this devil. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. That's what America thinks. That's what these Edomites that control America think. Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it rises. America, Babylon the Great, aka Edom, the Edomites' greatest empire. Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it rises. Those are your fellow Edomites that are going to put it on you. The Russians, the Chinese, Moab, North Koreans, the Persians, the Iranians. They're going to put it on you. And mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off. You can't put off what's coming. America, you Edomites, you can't put off the judgment that's coming. Thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Those are going to be the intercontinental ballistic missiles that are coming for Babylon the Great. That place that they call America, where they imprisoned, incarcerated, murdered, pillaged, and raped and destroyed the true children of Israel, is going to be made an example of. Desolation shall come upon it suddenly. in the form of intercontinental ballistic missiles, which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. America was born in 1776, based on enchantments, secret societies, the Illuminati. Stand now with thine enchantments, your secret societies, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, your satanic worshipping, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. And everything that you have built, the whole system is based on sorceries, from your stock market, from the World Trade Organizations, the IMF, the banking, the financial institutions. It's all based on sorcery. Because the only people that were going to benefit from it were you Edomites, you so-called white people, and in particular the elite of you people. It says, if so be thou shalt be able to profit. And that's what they did. They profited off the system. The system that enslaved us, that murdered us. They raped, pillaged, sold us, stole our identity. If so be thou shalt be able to profit. If so be thou mayest prevail. It's coming to an end. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsel. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, all of your so educated men and women of Edom, of America, your astrologers, your stargazers, all of your so-called elites, the monthly prognosticators, stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. So let all of them, your government advisors, all of you that work in the finance business, your traders that work on the stock markets, your philosophers, your philanthropists, all of these people. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. And what's going to come upon them? Let's see. Behold, they shall be as stubble. What's going to make it stubble? The intercontinental ballistic missiles. The fire shall burn them. You Edomites are going to die in America, alongside the wicked 2/3 of the children of Israel. You're going to become stubble. The elites are going to have left the country. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. What's the power of the flame? The intercontinental ballistic missiles. America, Babylon the Great, is not going to be able to deliver itself from the power of the flame. The destruction is coming. That place is marked for destruction. Esau, Edom's greatest thing he's ever built, done, created, is going to be the greatest memorial that the world is ever going to see. The greatest destruction the world is ever going to see. And all of you Edomites that are going to be in America, you're going to die. The elites of Esau will not be there. They're going to be away in their bunkers. It says, there shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored. They've labored so hard to build America, boy, the greatest place in the world. The land of the free and the brave. Even thy merchants from thy youth, they shall wander every one to his quarter. None shall save thee. All praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah, Kadash. I'm going to end it right there. Edomites to Europeans. That's where they went from. The world is waking up. I pray you are edified by today's edification. As always, we want to give you the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone who have been leading this word, this fight in truth and spirit and sincerity in the name of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. And salutations to my fellow Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters that have been edified by the truth and are able to receive the truth of what we are teaching regarding who we are, the true children of Israel, and who the other nations are. As I always say, keep praying, keep safe, and hold on to this truth. Because this is all we got. This is our salvation. That we endure and that we believe through our faith, and that the Lord guides us and delivers us in the great and terrible day of the Lord, the war of Armageddon, the destruction of Babylon the Great, the salvation of the true children of Israel, and the elect. Shalom, 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 family. All praises